Greetings, everyone. I'm sure you've seen the word fan thrown around so much lately, and after seeing it endlessly used by the media as a rhetorical trick, it really made me think back to the classical socialists. And I'm going to read some passages from Bastiat's The Law. This book is over 100 years old, but it's a really light read, and so I recommend it to everybody. And then we're going to talk about the use of fandom and how it ties back into that. A confusion of terms. Socialism, like the ancient ideals from which it springs, confuses the distinction between government and society. As a result, every time we object to things being done by the government, the socialists conclude that we object to it being done at all. We disapprove of state education. Then the socialists say that we are opposed to any education. We object to a state religion. Then the socialists say that we want no religion at all. We object to state-enforced equality. Then they say we are against equality, and so on and so on. It is as if the socialists were to accuse us of not wanting persons to eat because we do not want the state to raise grain. The influence of socialist writers. How did politicians ever come to believe this weird ideal that the law could be made to produce what it does not contain? The wealth, the science, and religion that, in positive sense, constitute prosperity. It is due to the influence of our modern writers on public affairs. Present-day writers, especially those of the socialist school of thought, base their various theories upon one common hypothesis. They divide mankind into two parts. People in general, with the exception of the writer himself, form the first group. The writer all alone forms the second and most important group. Surely this is the weirdest, most conceited notion that ever entered the human brain. In fact, these writers on public affairs begin by supposing that people have within themselves no means of discernment, no motivation to action. The writers assume that people are inert matter, passive particles, motionless atoms, at best a kind of vegetation indifferent to its own manner of existence. They assume that people are susceptible to being shaped by the will and hand of another person into an infinity variety of forms, more or less symmetrical, artistic, and perfected. Moreover, not one of these writers on government affairs hesitates to imagine that he himself, under the title of organizer, discoverer, legislator, or founder, is this will and hand, this universal motivating force, this creative power whose sublime mission is to mold these scattered materials, persons, into a society. These socialist writers look upon people in the same manner that the gardener views his trees, just as the gardener capriciously shapes the trees into pyramids, parasols, cubes, vases, fans, and other forms. Just so does the socialist writer whimsically shape human beings into groups, series, centers, subcenters, honeycombs, labor corps, and other variations. And just as the gardener needs axes, pruning hooks, saws, and shears to shape his trees, just so does the socialist writer need the force that he can find only in law to shape the human beings. For this purpose, he devises tariff laws, tax laws, relief laws, and school laws. Now let me read some chapter titles going forward without reading the passages. The socialists despise mankind. The defense of compulsory labor. The defense of paternal government. The ideal of passive mankind. Socialists ignore reason and facts. Does that sound like some people you know? Socialists want to regiment people. A famous name and an evil ideal. The leader of Democrats. Socialists want forced conformity. Legislators desire to mold mankind. Legislators told how to manage men. A temporary dictatorship. Socialists want equality of wealth. Now you know why people have said that this book sounds like it was written years ago, not over a century ago. These people have not fundamentally changed in hundreds of years. So when I'm on social media and comment section saying like, hey, like when people are like, well, why is this going on? I'm like, well, you were warned about these kind of people for years and you just ignored the warnings. And now these people have power. Yet again, they're doing exactly what they did in the 1900s. They're doing exactly what they did in the 1800s. They're doing exactly what they did in the 1700s, and then they're doing exactly what their predecessors did before them. These people do not change. Learn from history. And that brings us to the concept of fandom. This is why journalists use the word fans. Now, see, they're shaping it. They're the voice of fandom, and you will have a fear of social ostracism, so you're just going to agree with what they say. Oh, as a Star Wars fan, I'm supposed to like the Acolyte? Well, I guess I have to like the Acolyte. As a Star Wars fan, I'm supposed to be excited about Star Wars Outlaws? Oh, okay. And see, this problem is that doesn't really work in an era of decentralization of opinion that social media has given us. Social media has allowed us to put ideals out there in a way that people in the 1800s could never have dreamed of without a large budget. To do this in the 1800s, what you would have to do would be to hire an organization to send criers out to multiple towns, to newspapers, and have them print and, the cry in the town square your ideals. It would take a very long time. Now with a clickety clack of your keyboard, because I'm just going to assume you're a person of culture and using a mechanical keyboard. You have your ideals out there for the whole world to see. Content creators can put a video out there mocking Star Wars Outlaws, and there's nothing these journals can do about it, which is why they hate content creators, because they're challenging their narrative, they're challenging their control, which is strangely paradoxical, don't you think? You have a group of people that believe that human beings are just something to be molded and shaped without wills, yet know they have to manipulate them and isolate them from alternatives, or they won't go along with them. How do you paradoxically think that humans are absolutely empty shells to be shaped by you, but at the same point in time, know you have to manipulate them? Now, this isn't like some Machiavellian genius who understands psychology, understands that people fear social ostracism. Well, they do understand that part. Understand that the lack of an inner monologue and act on emotions, that if you manipulate the women of a nation, the men will follow. Yes, that's right, from the Psychological Warfare Handbook from the U.S. military. Like, trust me, people have put a lot of thought into manipulating people. And no, I don't have that book. I just heard someone talking about it. Terrence Pops, I believe. And he referenced that because they were talking about it because it leaked online. So, you're in the fandom. They speak for the fandom. Then everyone else looks at it like, oh, hey, they're the voice of the fandom. Like, no one invited these people into fandoms. Although, to be fair, in the last decade plus, people really haven't gatekept, so, you don't really need an invitation anymore. But they weren't invited in. They're not part of the fandoms, yet they claim to speak for the fandoms. And then they just lie, manipulate, and spread disinformation. And when you don't agree with them, they lose their minds like the spoiled children they are, not getting their way. These people are so basic that a book from 100 years ago describes them perfectly. And that's all I have to say about that. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.